Hi, pals. Welcome to Page versus Screen. If you're new around here, this is where I read a story, watch as many movie and TV adaptations as I can find, and then compare them to see if they can pass muster. Today, I'm going to be taking another walk with the ghost of Christmas past and looking at more of the many, many versions of Dickens's A Christmas Carol. But there is a twist! Or rather, a bend. Yep, today we're looking at a gender-bent carol, where all of our Scrooges are women. The format is simple. I tell you what could have been better, and what had me declaring,
and God bless us.
I look at how entertaining the adaptation is, how accurate it is to the original plot and characters, and how many changes worked for or against it to figure out which did things better, the page or the screen. By now, I'm sure a lot of people have the basics of the story down. Crotchety old man needs to learn a lesson, gets a shit scared out of him by some ghosts. If you don't remember anything beyond that and are expecting a longer summary, well, sorry not sorry, I don't have one for you in this video. You'll have to check out last year's installment for a 3-minute download for A Christmas Carol. Speaking of last year's video, and before I dive into this year's batch, I have to make an addendum to one of my rankings from last year. I said that Disney's 2009 adaptation was, oh my god, so good. But there were a few things that bugged me just enough that I couldn't quite put it in a higher tier than as good as the book. Upon further reflection, I'm shifting it from as good to bless us. So there is now officially an adaptation in Page vs. Screen that is better than the book. Now, don't get me wrong, the things that bugged me then still bug me now, but there's so much right with that movie. So many things that are well done, and after looking at this year's batch, I had to adjust it because it does exceed all of this year's batch. And there were some that were well done from what I watched for this installment. Okay, on to this year. The overall earliest known general adaptation is from 1901. However, the world didn't get a woman Scrooge until 1995. So let's start there. Ebbie gives us a modernization of the story with Susan Lucci as the titular Elizabeth Ebbie Scrooge. She runs a 90s department store, and it's a busy Christmas Eve at the start of the movie. We do see a few other gender-bent characters, like Bob Cratchit, nephew Fred, and young love interest Belle have become Roberta, Fran, and Paul, respectively. It is from the 90s, and everything that we see of the brief love aspect is from her past, so of course, a more mainstream movie is going to have hetero couple. Actually, all the adaptations in this comparison have Belle's guy, even the more recent ones within the last 5 years. But yeah, back to the story though. Ebbie is a crotchety miser who fires and yells at staff on Christmas Eve, refuses to have the annual party, and skips out on the annual bonus. Very Scrooge. Because this one is set in a modern time rather than the Victorian era, there were some changes based on that alone. Like she picks up food from a late-night grocery store instead of having dinner at a tavern. Nice that they actually included that little aspect, because a lot of the time the lonely dinner at the tavern is cut out. So yeah, nice to see that in there. And when she sees Marley, she thinks she's having side effects from some pills she took rather than it being some indigested beef. And one of my favorite adjustments, it was so small, but it totally fit. Totally fit. Instead of being told that you will be visited by 3 ghosts, she's told that she has 3 appointments coming up that night. No, nothing about ghosts or anything, just that she had 3 appointments. It was fun. It was such a small detail, but it was great world building. There are some changes made, or rather expansions, especially in the Christmas past section. In the book, we see Scrooge at school, and he's not on good terms with his father, but he gets along with his sister. And we know that his sister dies when her son is young. These things are never shown in the book, they're only ever mentioned. However, we're shown the disdain that Ebbie's father has for a family that he never wanted in the first place, still showing us that she's a lonely kid in her own home rather than a lonely kid at boarding school. Eventually, though, at least in the book, Scrooge's dad apparently becomes a better person, but in this movie, that never comes up. We also see her sister's death. She goes into labor with her daughter early and dies in the hospital with Ebbie at her side. This all goes down on the night of the Dobson, aka Fezziwig, Christmas party where she meets Paul. Even though he barely knows her, he's dropping Ebbie off at home when she's told about her sister getting taken to hospital, and so he ends up taking her and stays to make sure that she is okay. Her sister dying is very sad. It is heart-wrenching. But the stuff with Paul is really sweet, so it's a weird scene, but it works. Something I mostly loved about this was the ghosts. For the Ghost of Christmas Past, we had the staff that she yelled at from earlier, the ladies from the perfume counter, and well, they did take her through her past, and yes, they did spray perfume as part of their transporting through time process. If they missed that opportunity, I would have been like, well, what the fuck? Christmas Present was another member of staff that Ebbie had had words with earlier, and well, this was her intro. It's something you have to see to get.
Hey, boss. Ho, ho, ho. Guess who I am? Come on. Boxes, ribbons.
You're my next appointment?
Wrapping paper. Christmas present, get it? Christmas presents? I'm Christmas present. Ho, ho, ho.
Did I mention she's one of the store's gift wrappers? Nice touch. She ends up being more sassy throughout rather than jolly, but it kind of worked for the character. I also really liked that they kept in the stuff where past and present are throwing her own words back at her. They stayed true to the plots. However, when it came to Chris's future, I was a little disappointed. He was another staff member. He was the guy that got fired. But, they could have done some clever lighting to keep his face hidden and keep some of the mysterious aspect to him. This touch of disappointment may or not become a bit of a thing. At least he didn't say anything, though. And yes, I know the avatars of the ghosts were supposed to be links to her life, but his hat and coat would have been enough to signify that link, and added to the aspect of uncertainty that Chris's future represents, if they found a way to hide his face. What they did with the ghosts was inventive. So far, it's the earliest version that I've seen where they did something like that. Yes, I know that the Smart's Christmas Carol had this, but that was made almost 20 years after this one. So yeah. Earliest adaptation, even though I watched it later. There were other changes, but this part's running long, and this is only the first one I've talked about today, so final verdict. They hit all of the major plot points in fun and inventive ways. Most of the changes made worked for the setting and kept in with the general spirit of things, even if I was a little disappointed with some of it. And a couple of cuts were very minor. I didn't take anything away from the story. It was entertaining. Almost as much as the Disney '09 version. I'm happy to put this in the as good section. Next up, we have 1997's Ms. Scrooge. What to say? Well, here we get, as far as I know, our first Black Scrooge, named Ebenita, which is actually important to the portion of past. Her dad is a World War II vet, and as a departure from the original story, is mostly a nice guy who wants to do right by his family and open a store to support them. But it's the American South. During the Jim Crow era, you can imagine how things go. Point of clarification. I know that things aren't a utopia nowadays by any means, so don't at me, okay? I'm pointing out the specific point in time to paint a clearer picture of the codified laws and larger community mindset, as horrible as they may be. It's actually important for this Scrooge's past. One thing that did bug me with her dad is that he went to Ebenita for money when she was a child, cause...
Yeah, well, the only one in this family any good at saving money.
Okay, yeah, different time and all, but you know what? She's a child, not even a teen yet. He is the parent. It should never be up to any child to pay the bills for the household. If you're not old enough to vote or expected to pay taxes, it's not up to you to pay for the general household expenses. Never mind the startup costs for a parent's business. So in that way, he's a dick. But otherwise, he's not a bad guy from what we see. Also, this guy is Christmas past. I did not like it. He may not have the bow tie or facial hair specifically, but he's got the visual vibes of Colonel Sanders otherwise, which makes me think plantation owner, which was not a good look. And like, the point of past is that it's your younger youthful days. You know, there's supposed to be hope, and how is somebody with that look supposed to represent hope to a black woman that, you know, grew up during the civil rights movement? It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. And I hope that whoever that douchebag is that is revving their engine, I hope they did not pick up on the mic. Anyways. So I guess we know you are overcompensating for things. That's nice. Okay, moving on. Where was I? Right, okay. So I have questions. Like, why does she have a cat? Before she has her change of heart moment, she doesn't care about any other living creature, but she has a cat that she loves. You know, it's the only thing that she loves other than money, but she still loves another living, breathing thing other than herself. Like, it does not track at all with the character. And why do they not have her soften at all during the past and present parts? Like, she was just getting more and more set and everything, and I wondered for most of the movie when she was going to act like a human, and if the transformation was going to be believable. In the end, it stretched the limits. The closest she got to showing she was changing was when Tiny Tim was dying, and she asked if he'd be okay. But the emotion, it wasn't there. It was wooden. And in the end, it just felt like emotional whiplash. And why, oh why, oh why didn't they give Future any mystery? In this one, none of the personifications are meant to be somebody from her life, so they could have gone away with some sort of something. Not everything was bad. The Cratchits were actually well done, and her nephew was a very good character. Overall, though, the movie was dry, and the pacing was terrible. Mr. Director, what were you thinking? Plus, all of the ghosts from Marley to Christmas Future were a letdown. However, I did appreciate that her backstory was different, showing what life was like for another group of people aside from the traditional background of the story, and that they didn't mess with the love story aspect. They made it fit more for the time period, and same with the reasons that that they broke up. He wanted to. She had moved north. She met the guy, Steve, and then he wanted to move down south. He had trained to be a lawyer, and he wanted to move down south to be a lawyer down there for the community. And she didn't want to go with him. That's what it was. So yeah, they made it fit more for the time period and the background of the characters, but all the major points are in check with that part of the story. So mostly because of that, and what's to come, I am putting this in the good section. And now, entering the 21st century, we're taking a look at a Diva's Christmas Carol, aka Wilhelmina Sings Christmas. Why? Because Vanessa Williams plays Ebony Scrooge, a diva of the highest order. She penny pinches, she's a bitch to everybody, she decides to throw a charity concert at the last minute on Christmas Day, so nobody gets the day off. But hey, they get Boxing Day. That's just as good, right? And with the charity concert, I mean, she and her money manager are doing everything they can to inflate expenses so they don't have to give as much money to said charity. So very much a Scrooge. Something interesting they did was have Bob not only be her band manager, but he's also the belle of this version. That's right, in this one, she's to date Bob. I was a little weirded out with it at first, because I was worried they'd go into full-blown Hallmark territory with it. And it just wouldn't have felt right, especially when there was the whole hurrying to the airport to stop them flying away thing. Oh, but luckily they didn't, and it felt better by the end of everything. There really wasn't too much that annoyed me with this movie. The subplot with the douchey money manager was a little extra, but that was the worst of anything. I did enjoy the ghosts. Marley was played by Chili from TLC. They have a suspenseful build. She's in something more like a Goth chain outfit rather than dragging chains around. And instead of dropping her jaw, she just, takes her face off. So we don't see the face off her. We just kind of see her start to move it, and then the rest is left to the imagination. This is a VH1 movie after all, so yeah. Past, she used light to transport them places, and her dress had a flowery motif, bringing those bits from the book to her character, so that was fun. And present kept in with a music biz theme. He's a partying rock star, and when we first see him, Ebony hears noises from the next room in her hotel suite, so she investigates, and we see more of the belligerent side of this ghost. And then there was Future. I actually kind of like this one. They set it up where Future was a VH1 special, The Life and Tragic Death of a Diva. And Ebony thinks that there must be a mistake, and she's sure that they're talking about Celine. Well, sorry, not happening. One of my favorite things in the movie is on Christmas morning, and, well, here, watch.
You there, boy! Hello! Yes, you!
Who the dick is you calling boy?
I'm sorry, I don't have my contacts in yet.
Nice little nod to the original story there. This movie may have had a lot more humorous moments than some of the other versions, but it was well timed, the funny parts didn't take away from the main message of the story, and it was perfectly paced. This is the movie that actually made me realize that the pacing of Ms. Scrooge is what made it feel really off. In the end, the changes, additions, and modernizations didn't feel all that weird, and some, like Future being a TV special, were really inventive, and like with Ebbie, it was really accurate to the story, factoring in the modern setting. And if you couldn't tell, I was entertained! But no matter how much I loved it, I can't give it the God bless us, but I can say it was as good. So now we dive into one of the first true Hallmark movies of the list. Yes, some screenshots of the previous movies show that they were aired on Hallmark, but they weren't made by said company. But this one, yeah. I will say this, there's a time and place for them, but watching 4 of them practically in a row makes Penny something something. That being said, I was as fair as possible with the movies of this vein. Enough prattling on. Time to specifically talk about 2003's A Carol Christmas. In this one, Carol is a talk show host, and her producer is really going for a Jerry Springer, Jeremy Kyle, Maury Povich style of a show. Carol is true to form to the Scrooge archetype. She derides her ex-boyfriend's efforts to help the poor, is a bit of a bitch backstage, and even gives us a bah humbug, plus a bunch of other things that she makes up for after the ghostly visitors come and go. We have Gary Coleman playing past and Will Shatner playing present. I thought it was fun that past used light to get around, and instead of Carol hearing present in the next room and discovers him, she wakes up and watches some TV, and there is Shatner as Dr. Bob, some sort of TV medical quack like Dr. Oz or Dr. Phil, but he's in a Santa suit and jolly as fuck. They were okay presentations of the ghosts, but Future, it was a letdown again. Surprise, surprise. I said it was going to be a thing, and it's a thing. Hopefully there will be adaptations that I watch later where it's not a letdown. That would be nice. And while I'm still on the ghosts, at the very end when Carol has found the error of her ways and goes to spend Christmas with her family, which I'll get to that in a moment, the 3 ghosts are watching at the window. And it's weird. They're just staring in through the front room window, shooting the shit, and that was a change that just made me go, what the actual fuck? Also, and now I don't have a problem with original lines from the text getting put into modernizations when they make sense too. I'll never get upset at a bah humbug being in any Christmas Carol adaptation. And the bit in Diva on Christmas morning that I already mentioned, if they didn't make that into a joke, it wouldn't have fit, and it would have annoyed me a bit because it would have been out of place. In this one, a lot of the original prose wouldn't make sense. And so when she's with Future and she says,
all these things that you show me, are they shadows of what might be? Or what will be?
It annoyed me. Because she doesn't talk like that for the rest of the movie. It didn't fit her. They modernized everything else. It wasn't a bit. it was a serious thing. They could have given her a line with the same meaning, but made it sound more like it would have come out of her mouth in the modern age. I mean, if you're gonna make all these changes, be consistent. Our Bob in this is Roberta, Carol's assistant. And she's a single mom with a daughter and has a bit of a something going on with one of the guys on set. And they took her family stuff in a different direction than in the other versions. Instead of her daughter Lily being sick, Roberta's ex shows up demanding custody even though he walked out on them years before, and is going to get lawyers involved. And well, they're dirt poor. They have barely more than a Charlie Brown tree, and she just can't afford a lawyer to fight it. As part of the turnaround on Christmas Day, Carol offers to pay for a lawyer for Roberta, even though her assistant has no idea what she's talking about yet. She just hands her the card, and Roberta's like, okay. Trust me, you'll need it. Okay. I haven't really talked much about the love interest part of the movie. As you'd expect, during past part, we see her with a guy. He was actually about to propose, but fame and fortune in the form of Carol's Aunt Marla's aspirations got in the way, and the couple break up. Now, so far, our Femme Scrooges don't get back together with their ex, even if he's cropped up in the present time, and I don't mean the ghost, I mean the actual present timeline. However, this is a Hallmark movie, and so when Carol is at her sister's for Christmas dinner, suddenly her ex is at the door, and it looks like they'll get back together. We have seen it work where she doesn't get back with her ex, and guess what? She's fine! Bloody Hallmark. For them, a woman can only be happy if she's with a man. Overall, the general changes, modernizations, cuts, and additions made sense to the modern setting and nature of Hallmark movies, while keeping to the general spirit of the original story, and the shift from sick kid to custody battle was an interesting change for the Cratchit storyline, and actually worked well for the setting of the movie. It was mildly entertaining and better than good, but taking into account the things that bugged me, I can't say it was as good either. So I'm gonna put this one on the cusp of good. And yes, I can do that because it's my thing. Next movie we're looking at is the furthest from a Hallmark style movie that you can get. It's Nan's Christmas Carol. Brit actress Catherine Tate had a sketch show along the lines of the Carol Burnett Show, and one of her characters was Nan, a crotchety old woman that hates everybody and everything. So, of course, she is the perfect Scrooge stand-in. And before I talk about it, full disclosure, I've seen it a couple times before prepping for this video. So, it's set in modern times, but first time we see Nan in this, well, she comes out like this.
I'm on an economy drive.
No reason for it other than it's Nan and everything is going to be taking the piss a bit. Or a lot. Like Bob Cratchit. He's a cousin, and apparently Nan said that he and his family could come and stay for Christmas when she was pissed drunk at some family do, and she didn't mean it, so she throws them out on their ear, even though their little dog, who's literally named Tiny Tim, he's kind of sick. Actually, not kind of sick, he's very sick. But regardless, the Cratchits are happy. Stupidly. Over the top happy. Her husband Jake, who's been dead for years, is in place of Marley, and he's annoyed about how he was buried, but he still gives his warning before he goes. But Nan doesn't believe him. She thinks, it's just some weird dream or whatever, and goes to sleep. And then she's woken up by a knock at her door, and it's past. But he's having a hard time coming in, and he smashes through the door, and then he has to go through a whole big thing to try to convince her that he is in fact a ghost, even though he's dressed up like Dickens. Like, come on, what else do you want? It isn't until he's taken her to her childhood that she believes he might actually be a ghost. Present is a jolly guy dressed like a foppish-looking rock star, and we first see him coming out of the kitchen with smoke coming after him because he loves his food and he kind of burned his food. And he's playing the Ghostbusters theme. That happens to be his ringtone. And we're taking to see the Cratchits at the bus depot, and Tiny Tim does what he must in most versions and he dies. But he dies from choking on a crisp rather than being sickly. That's a bit of a departure. And normally I take issue when we see Future's face and it's not done all serious. Like I've said before, there's that whole fear of the unknown thing, and with and that goes into the character. But that portrayal would not fit with this one with its more ridiculous slapstick comedic style. The other versions are meant to be more serious portrayals overall. This one isn't. So when we have futures shown like this...
I am the ghost of Christmas future. I am here to warn you.
You're supposed to be frightening me.
Yes.
It actually works. Like in Diva, they totally make a joke of the Scrooge waking up changed on Christmas Day thing. She yells off her balcony at her grandson, "Boy, what day is it?" And he's just standing there kind of like, it's Jamie. It's your grandson. What the hell? And they go through her asking him to get a goose from the store, which of course they can't get because, it's the 21st century and a goose for Christmas isn't so common. And then they eventually settle on something, but it worked considering the format. Hey, look at that consistency. It can be done. Everybody that was wronged, including some carolers that she had gotten mad at earlier on, played by the UK group Madness, are over for a Christmas meal, and everything is hunky-dory. She's turned over a new leaf. Everything is great. Until the end, when, she, knowingly feeds Tiny Tim a crisp, so maybe she's not so good in the end. Again, this one is meant to take the piss straight from the start. It's not meant to be serious at all, so all the changes make sense, and even if it's not the most accurate thing ever, it hits all the major points of the plot in some way, shape, or form. I don't really have any complaints about it. I mean, it was great. Nobody can say it's better than the original story, though, but I can say it was as good as Dickens' story. Now we come to 2010's Christmas Cupid. Sloane is our successful Scrooge who works PR. Her biggest sin in the work world is that she's ambitious and is pushy. It's in the world of romance, where she's horrible. All of her ghosts are ex-boyfriends, except for what's supposed to be the Marley character. I mean, she literally makes a Marley reference about herself. That is given to the starlit client, Caitlin, that dies right at the beginning of the movie, that Sloane is always trying to rein in. Her main ex, who isn't one of the ghosts, is Patrick, played by Chad Michael Murray, and they see each other for the first time in literal years when Sloane has to go to identify Caitlin's body. Now, being honest, I'm a little disappointed that they didn't make any silly references to Jared Padalecki. I mean, they referenced Chad Michael Murray and Gilmore Girls on Supernatural. So what makes the writers of this movie think they're any better than the writers of Supernatural? Jeez. Missed opportunity. At work, most people are worse. They're backstabbing, wanting to take advantage of the celebrity's death. She's told that she's got to plan the memorial so that it happens on Christmas Day, which then forces everybody to have to work overtime right before and on Christmas. And this includes her boyfriend's dad. Yep, she's dating the boss's son. Not advisable, but not the worst thing in the world either, except he's horrible to her like she was horrible to Patrick. I mean, she left him just before he was going off to medical school. Her dreams were elsewhere, and that part isn't bad, but leaving without saying anything and then, taking pretty much everything with her, yeah, that's not so good. And when she finds out how horrible her current boyfriend has been, she breaks it off and goes out to a fancy dinner with Patrick. And then the date is crashed by her newly minted ex-boyfriend. But he, the ex-boyfriend, proposes and she accepts. So, yeah. I mean, she's not a typical Scrooge in the way that we would associate with A Christmas Carol, but she's not a great person either, at least in the romance arena. She actually has some form of conscience in other areas of her life, even if she can be a bit forgetful here and there. She initially forgets to put vouchers for a friend's restaurant in the swag bags for the memorial. With the rushed nature of things and the pressure of her being up for promotion, while it sucks, I can't understand those not being on top of her mind, at least until it was too late. That's one of the things she gets to go back and fix after the epiphany moment. In the end, this movie wasn't actually made by Hallmark, but it may as well have been for all that it is, because she ends up with Patrick when all is said and done. They also stripped out almost everything of the initial story. Yes, the ghosts are there and teach her a lesson, but it's more of a romantic lesson than a general, don't be a dick kind of thing. Since, she's not the worst of the worst in the rest of her life that we see. She's not a saint, but there are people that are far worse than her in the movie in every other aspect of life. Also, the fact that Caitlin was around for pretty much the whole movie really annoyed me. Like, she's also kicking around during past and present parts. It kind of took away from their presence. She was gone during Future's bit, so yay, but her being around for most of it made me wonder what they were thinking doing that. And the acting was terrible. I want to wipe this movie's existence from my mind. So I take back, actually, what I said a moment ago about how this movie may as well be a Hallmark movie. Because you know what? It goes like this. Great movies. Good movies. Passable Hallmark movies. Crappy Hallmark movies. A Christmas Cupid. It is so far down in the rankings, you can't see it because it is deep in the bowels of the Sarlacc pit. It is horrible. So this one gets a big old humbug. For its Christmas Carol from 2012, we are back to a proper modern Scrooge. Carol runs her own publishing house, is making her employees work on Christmas, refuses to donate money, uses fear to run her empire, etc., etc., etc. Yes! Now that is what I want to see at the beginning of a version of this story. There is something special about this movie, though. We get one ghost throughout. It's not like the last one where there's our Marley stand-in accompanying our Scrooge while seeing the other ghosts. We get one ghost. Eve. She is our Marley character, but she's not at the same time because she was kind and everybody loved her while she was alive. I guess the casting directors didn't think that anybody would believe that Carrie Fisher, being that much of a bitch as she'd have to be for a true blue Marley, would be a thing. Guess they just didn't think it would be believable. I agree with them. So Carrie is pulling quadruple duty as all four of the main ghosts. I did wonder if they were going to have somebody else pop in for future because of how they had things at the start of that section. But I was unfortunately disappointed since this is what we get in the end.
Eve, were you scared?
Now, I love Carrie Fisher, don't get me wrong, she was amazing. But, this is a more serious version. So can we get a more serious future, please? Please, would it kill anybody? No. We did get the extended time with the group of pawners that came up near the end of the book. During Future's time, before we know for sure who died, and some people have looted Scrooge's home. Well, they don't loot her home, but they do want to break away and start their own company, looting clients in the process. We get to see a bit of scheming, and Carol is, of course, as indignant as Scrooge is in the book when we see Scrooge's things have been taken. It was a fun touch that really drove home how bad it was for the staff. One thing that kind of annoyed me is that when it's a point where Scrooge is supposed to be seeing the proverbial light, Carol isn't. She just keeps going on like before. It's a longer burn in the book, and that works for the story. And in this movie, it's more abrupt, and I didn't like that. I don't like the abrupt whiplash bullshit. What I do find cool, as long as it's done well, with modernizations, is seeing how they change certain aspects of the stories. Like with the Christmas morning stuff, some will go with the traditional thing of yelling out the window into the street, and some will go a different way. With this one, instead of going the more trad way, we have Carol calling 411, which makes all the damn sense. And I can't believe that no other adaptation that I've seen so far has gone that route. It's actually kind of surprising since it's a pretty obvious way to go. And of course, it's a Hallmark movie. So she ends up with her romantic partner that we meet during the portion of Christmas Past. There's a whole thing about a typewriter she got for him because he's an author and whatnot. But yeah, the movie was okay. It amused me, and it was sort of self-realizing that it's a play on A Christmas Carol, but they do posit a few movie references, including Star Wars. If you've got Carrie Fisher, it's actually a crime to not make that reference. So, they had to. So, somewhat entertaining, a lot of the changes made sense, and it was somewhat accurate to everything. But, we had to deal with the whole she has to end up with a man thing, so Well, it's not the worst thing I've watched. It's not the best either. Sorry, Carrie. So this one is good, but it's not as good as the book. And now we have A Nashville Christmas Carol from 2020. We get some fun special casting with this one too. Winona Judd, Kix Brooks from Brooks and Dunn, Kimberly Williams Paisley, Sarah Evans, and Raylan. So just a few people with a large-ish country music presence, either from they themselves or their spouse. Makes sense, since it's a Nashville thing, you know. It was a little weird to see Cinderella and Gaston 2.0 from Once Upon a Time playing opposite each other as the romantic lead couple, though. Yeah, just a little weird. There's some weird shit in this movie, like some what the actual fuck kind of shit. I mean, Vivian, the person who's supposed to be our Scrooge, she really isn't. I mean, she literally donates to charity and helps kids. She helped raise her sister after the mom walked out and their dad was having trouble coping. At work and at home, she's a little particular about things, but like, some people like things a certain way. It's not the end of the world. And at work, you know, she wants and kind of needs things to be as perfect as possible since she's now in charge of this big Christmas special that's being put on by the production company she works for. Like, she's the main producer. This is a big deal. It's a lot of pressure. She doesn't want people to have distractions, but it's nothing over the top. It's not like it's a toxic work environment or anything like that, you know, like any of the other adaptations from this video. And it's not like in a Christmas Cupid where she pulls total bitch move on her past love. Like, the situation around their not speaking is just a stupid misunderstanding, but you can also kind of see where she's coming from. He made her a promise that he couldn't really keep, and it wasn't ever going to be a decision that was down to him. I mean, he did try to keep his promise, but he couldn't. Then when she needed a bit of space right after, like immediately right after, within like the first 24 hours, so that she could get a better headspace to deal with things, he was constantly trying to contact her, blowing up her phone. And then he just abruptly ghosts her and leaves the city, going, think it was California he went to. Like, it's like, seriously. But straight up her sister, who wasn't a bad person either, like, she wasn't a bad person. She was actually a little worse than Vivian. She goes on at one point about how Vivian gets everything, so why can't she have one thing for her? Yeah. Vivian gave up so much growing up so that her little sister should get whatever she needed their whole lives, including birthdays and Christmas gifts. That way her sister could get, again, as good a life as possible, sans mom. Does that sound like a horrible person to you? 'Cause it doesn't to me. This movie was only tangentially connected to A Christmas Carol. I mean, they had the ghosts, except for Future. Future was completely cut out. But they have it so that Marilyn, the Marley character of the movie, says that, you know, the future is what we make it. So even though they cut out the ghost, they made it kind of work. I mean, the future is unknown, which still ties into the cloaked, faceless figure, just not in a spooky way. When all was said and done, and despite my frustrations with it, the movie was cute and it had its moments. But it wasn't overly accurate to the source material. Like, even Marilyn seemed to not be that bad. The worst thing she says is that Vivian should look out for herself, which in showbiz isn't the worst idea. Just saying. So this one is going into the good category. There were worse movies that I've seen. But as I said before, there is a time and a place for Hallmark movies, and those like them. And so after 4 within a week, I'm all Hallmarked out. So that's the last adaptation for this Page versus Screen. And even though we have one movie of the 16 that I've seen so far that I've officially put into the Bless Us category, aka better than the book, so far, overall, the Page is better than the Screen. We'll see what happens next year. In the meantime, I have a video for members where I'm making the Nami-Nog that I'm enjoying right now. So join me, a picky bitch, for that. And as a reminder, for this season, Well, I don't want a lot for your tide. There is just one thing I need for you to like and to subscribe and see more of me in your feed and to share this video. Please become a member too, 'cause if you do, there will be more content there just for you. So join me for the next page versus screen, where the plan is to continue on my journey through the looking glass with part 2 of Alice in Wonderland, and, well, any other video I make in between. Until next time, pals, blessed be.